Hey everyone, welcome to episode 208 of the Alamo Audible Podcast, episode 1 of the Alamo Audible Podcast. It's going to take a long time for Adrian and I to retrain our brain to not say Alamo Audible when we do these podcasts.
Big time.
Yeah, but we're going to keep the numbers going no matter what. So this is 208. And if you guys haven't heard already, you can go back to our last post on the feed. Check out the website. We are rebranding from Alamo Audible to Alamo Audible. So this is our first episode with our new name. If you want to hear more about how that came to be and all that good stuff, just go check back to that previous post. But here today, we are back to get into the swing of things, back to get into the groove. This is our first football podcast in like a month, I think. We've had some baseball stuff. We had some XFL Brahma stuff. But this is the first honest to God football podcast. So Adrian, it's good to be back in our normal habitat, I guess, and all the BS is mostly behind us. And now we can just get back to doing what we love, man.
Back to basics, baby. Back to basics. It feels so good to just sit here and talk about Roadrunners football and nothing else, man. Yeah, this is what we do. This is what we started this thing to do. And we've been so caught up in the operations side and the legal side and all that stuff. Man, for lack of a better term, it's a bummer. All right. And here we are. And we're excited to do a lot of it, but this is what we enjoy, And so It's fantastic to be back right here in the saddle with my dog, talking Roadrunners football. As we get ready to enter, Jared, the most, is pivotal the right word? The most important, the most crucial season that we're entering into as we go into the American Athletic Conference. And then spring practice is already here. It's starting this week. And we're going to have spring practice content. Not too much of that today, because prior to spring practice starting, since our last podcast, there has been a hell of a lot of news surrounding UTSA football, primarily with the staff. We've had a little bit of roster stuff, but I think most of that was kind of cemented after early signing day, which we hit on. But a lot of staff changes, a ton of staff changes. And we also got a full American Conference schedule for 2023. It is juicy. Yes. So how about we get all the way caught up from everything that's happened up until spring practice, and then we're going to have a whole dedicated spring practice episode for you guys as well.
Right. And of course, there's not a whole lot to discuss when it comes to the first couple of days of spring football. I mean, it is bottom level of, position battles and guys learning the playbook. I mean, most of the returning starters are not even really participating in spring. So it's not like there's some hard hitting, analysis that we can do without coming off sounding like Stephen A. Smith or something and just ranting at a cloud. But yeah, next episode, we're going to dive more into what little of we can glean from all that. Yeah. But yeah, like Adrian said today, we just kind of want to play catch up a little bit since we have been so caught up in off the field situations, if you will, off the field distractions.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
And that's such a good point. I was watching one of the post practice interviews from Monday, and they were asking Jeff, "Hey, how'd it go out there today?" And he was like, "Looked like a first day." And it pretty much tells you all you need to know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, guys haven't been playing football in a couple months. Got to get out there and get the rust off. And that's primarily what's happening. So I think by the time next week rolls around, we're going to have some good sound bites, some good interview content. We'll be hearing some whisperings about the guys that are watching the practices. And we'll actually have some good in-depth coverage to bring you guys at that point.
Right. Absolutely. So before we start talking of, all the football news items catch up, if you will, I do want to take a moment to recognize our Patreon supporters who keep us going through good times and bad. Like we said in our last episode, we've had some bad times lately, unfortunately, in having to rebrand. But the support of the Patreon donors is what keeps us plugging away and committed and focused, and also able to invest the money we need to buy new domain names and all kinds of stuff like that that might come up unexpectedly. Who knows?
Which we blocked that down already, right, Jared? We've got AlamoAudible.com.
I think you just get an error if you go to it today, but we will have that fixed momentarily. Every time I think to do it, I'm like, oh, we just posted a podcast today. There might be people like, on the site, but yeah, we'll definitely
shout out. Big shout out to the Patreons for fitting the bill on that.
Yeah. It was only $10, but unforeseen expenses are never fun. So it's nice to know that we can handle those as they come up. Anyways, thank you to our big money donors: Ben Tovar, Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Brandon Padron, the Fikes family, and big thank you to our board of trustees members: Digitique, John Otwell, Lino Perez of Los Dos Rowdy Tailgating, Gary and Ruben representing the UTSA Bird King Tailgate, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Grill Realty Group, and Andy Elizalde and Proficient Benefit Solutions. So thank you guys all so much for your continued support. You guys have remained rock solid throughout the football offseason. We typically see a pretty big decrease in people that continue to contribute throughout the offseason, and it's held pretty steady this year. Even though we have more donors, we still have seen less of a drop off. Big shout out to Dan as well for his baseball coverage. I think that's really getting people to stick around and support us with their subscriptions and all of that.
So good. Dan's content, so good.
Man.
Please follow Dan.
Even his live tweets at the baseball games are fantastic.
They're better than anyone else's live tweets. Like he has like an extra sentence in there that's like it's just incredible. You need to follow Dan. You need to be reading his blog post. Yeah. The guy is a full-fledged professional baseball beat guy. Like 100%.
I know he posted like his notes app that showed like how every run scored in the game, and I'm like, oh man, this guy's hardcore.
Amazing.
Yeah, big thank you to Dan. Oh, I guess since we were talking about Patreon real quick, we have soft launched our new online storefront. So a lot of those designs, unfortunately, are going to have to get scrapped due to some trademark issues. Again, thanks for your support. It allows us to fix those things as they come up. So if you're a Patreon supporter, you can go to the store on our website and you log in with your Patreon account. And then there's actually a coupon code you can use as well for a discount. We're pretty much not making any money on those sales. So if you just want to check out the new gear, give us your feedback on those. And we're looking forward to hearing how you guys like it or dislike it, because then we can fix it before it opens up for everybody. And if you're jonesing to get some future vintage Aluminum Audible gear, now's the time to sign up for Patreon and get access to the store and go buy it.
That's right. Get the original Alamo Dome Audible gear while you still can, folks.
Yeah.
Patreon soft launch / beta testing phase is available. Get on there, get it while you can, because logos are changing out pretty soon, guys.
Yeah. How about we do a quick cumbia break real quick, and then we'll jump into the rest of the podcast.
Oh, baby. Yes.
All right, we're back. Adrian, I know that people can't see you. This is just a podcast, but I'm on Zoom with you, and you're really swaying, head bobbing. Did you put the cumbia song on your earbuds during the break?
I can hear it in my head. Sans earbuds, Sans MP3. It's on autoplay, baby, on repeat. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, fair enough.
The trumpets are going, everything. Yeah, sing the melody to you.
Well, cool, man. Let's start running through all the staff changes first and foremost. I think that's probably the most interesting thing that's happened throughout this offseason, other than UTSA signing, a record signing class. That's huge as well. But a lot of internal promotions for UTSA, a lot of familiar names on this list, and some familiar external names as well, which is cool. We'll get into that. And I guess like the first thing we need to talk about, and it's kind of surprising that we haven't talked about this already, was Justin Burke getting promoted to the full-time offensive coordinator and tight ends coach.
That's right.
So as everyone knows, he did, call the plays as the interim OC in the bowl game. But since our last podcast, he's since been elevated into that full-time position. So what's your gut reaction to that?
I love it.
Yeah,
I do. I like Justin Burke a lot. I think he's done a great job cultivating he was a co-offensive coordinator He was a associate head coach, right? Special teams coordinator during 2022. He's coached the tight ends last year. He's going to continue coaching them this year. I think every single department he's had his hands on has been really, really good for UTSA. The special teams improved throughout the season, depending on, are we looking at place kicking, kickoffs, punts? But I think Justin Burke, all those special teams units performed pretty consistently throughout the year, pretty stout. And then you had the associate head coach position, a tight ends position. I mean, come on, our tight ends are studs, man. You need not Oscar Cardenas, Dan Dishman, guys that are developing underneath them. He's done a really, really good job. And Jeff Traylor was talking about this in one of his interviews. They're like, we got a lot of changes on the coaching staff. How's that? What is it like going through all of this change? And Traylor said something interesting. He said, change is the same because we deal with change in college football constantly now. So change is just standard operating procedure, right?
You have to embrace it.
You have to embrace it. And then he said, and this is why we're really, really focused on promoting from within. So guys have that familiarity. They know the team, they know the players, they know the playbook. And, so far that seemed to have worked really, really well. Traylor's sort of game plan there. And Justin Burke, I think, is going to continue doing that. And it makes things a hell of a lot easier when you've got a full offense of 3 and 4 year starters. You've got a quarterback who's league MVP, conference MVP, championship MVP. Yeah, man. He's got all of the, he's walking into a pretty nice setup here as the
he's set up for success, no doubt about it.
Right. I mean, even if Justin Burke isn't the most savvy offensive mind in the American Athletic Conference, to a degree, all he's got to do is not mess up, more so than game planning this genius sort of offensive scheme, maybe for 1 or 2 opponents. But I think for most of the games, he's got to go in there and just let this team do what they've been doing. And so I like it.
Yeah, I think the familiarity and the continuity argument holds more water under Jeff Traylor than I would have considered for other coaches, because I think a lot of times coaches use that as a cop-out of like, I don't think I can go get a good coach. No one wants to work, for this pay or whatever. Or they did strike out and going outside the program and trying to find someone externally and just couldn't get the kind of candidate they were looking for. So they ended up with no choice but having to promote within. But to me, it has always felt like Coach Traylor has been orchestrating and planning these career moves for his guys, right? So it's more of like mentoring a guy to be ready to step into this role in the future, just how it works in the business world.
Yeah,
versus like, oh, well, we lost our guy. Let's just grab, whoever was one step below him on the ladder on our current coaching roster. So, and I think it's also telling that Coach Burke got the OC spot over some of the other returning offensive coaches like Coach Price, because I think a lot of people just assume that Coach Price was going to get the offensive coordinator position, but Coach Burke getting it tells me that Traylor and the rest of his staff feel really strongly in Burke's play calling ability, his play design, his scouting ability, and just level of comfort, I guess, that the offensive players have with Coach Burke. So, obviously some of this it's hard to really criticize a coach when he's won this many games, right? Like he's going to get the benefit of the doubt, but trying to be as objective as I possibly can, as you guys know, I always try to do. I do see like that this is probably a good move, right? And I said this after our bowl game recap, but when I was first watching the bowl game, I was like, man, the offense does not look good right now. But then when I rewatched it and I was like, okay, I already know what's going to happen on this play. Let me see how guys are lined up. Let me see what read Frank is making. Let me see how the defense reacts to it, all that stuff. It made me realize that Troy's defense played a hell of a game. And I think that guys were schemed open, right? I think like there was plenty of opportunity for the offense, but the points didn't come. And a lot of that was from Troy playing really great, right? Yeah. And we now know that Frank was hurt during that game too.
Yep.
So that's another factor. So based off of that, originally had a pretty low grade for his debut as a offensive coordinator. But after rewatching it, I revised that a little bit. And I think when UTSA is playing a defense that's not the top defense in the G5 like Troy was last year, I think this offense is going to shine. And I think the talent they're coming back is going to make it easy for that to happen.
That's right. Yeah, I think you bring up a really good point about like Traylor prepping, because remember, he was promoted to the senior offensive analyst. And so he was already sort of in a position of supervising and really having a hand in crafting what the offense looked like. And he's an associate head coach. So it's almost as if Traylor kind of saw the writing on the wall and then was kind of prepping this guy to be ready to kind of just move seamlessly into that position.
Yeah, like he was giving him leadership responsibilities before he was in that actual leadership role, right? Which is huge.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. So yeah, there's a very, very coordinated, deliberate effort here for Traylor to kind of get Burke ready to be in that position. And I think he is. And let's remember, I mean, he's got a passing mind. He played quarterback at Louisville. And so he's really, really able to see the field from a quarterback's eyes. I love that about him. I think he's going to do great things with the passing game as it continues to sort of elevate to even greater heights here in the third year. And so, yeah, I'm a big fan of this internal promotions. I like what I've seen from Justin Burke. He hasn't done anything wrong so far, but I appreciate you talking about the Cure Bowl, because a lot of people were very unhappy with UTSA's offensive output in the Cure Bowl. And a big part of that, yes, Troy's defense was unbelievably stout. Frank Harris was injured, couldn't really run the ball at all. And so, yeah, you got to give him a grain of salt there. So,
yeah, and also, if I remember correctly, pretty much the whole big three was out for that game. Like, I think
Zakari got injured early.
Right.
Like the first quarter.
Right.
Yeah.
And then Cephas was suspended.
That's right.
And obviously JT was out for the year. So you pretty much lost your three biggest playmakers in the passing game.
No.
So let's see what this passing offense looks like with a full roster. But speaking of the passing game, I earlier made mention that I think a lot of people expected Coach Price to get the nod as OC, just given the crazy success he's had with developing the wide receivers, as well as his, experience on the recruiting trail. He's one of UTSA's top recruiters. So while he did not get the offensive coordinator position, he did get elevated to assistant head coach and passing game coordinator.
That's right.
Which is key for two reasons. I think first and foremost, if Burke were to get poached, because UTSA is now on their third offensive coordinator in 3 years, the trends show you that Burke might get poached pretty quickly if UTSA plays the way we're expecting them to. So I think it prepares Price. It gives him more leadership responsibilities within the staff, so that if Burke were to leave, then Price would be the one to make the jump up to the OC.
Well, same thing, of course, like writing on the wall, right? Burke was named the associate last year, and now Joe Price named the associate this year. Yeah, man, he's got a system.
Right. Yeah, and you can go down that coaching roster, and you can go back. I do this all the time. I trace from the 2021 coaching roster to the 2022 and 2023, and you can measure all this stuff out of how Traylor has planned all this. None of this is chance or just promotion for the sake of promotion. Like, he's preparing and mentoring and molding these guys.
That's right.
To move forward in their career. Right.
That's right. That's right.
And what's cool too is sometimes those guys are going to leave. They're going to come back for other roles. Right. We've already seen that with like City Canes. Right. He left for the defensive line coaching position at his alma mater, and then once the D-line coach spot opened up at UTSA, he ended up coming back to UTSA in a bigger bag. Right. So a lot of stuff like that you're going to see start to matriculate right throughout the years to come.
That's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah. Joe Price, unbelievable recruiter. North Shore High School, right? Galena Park, total powerhouse here in Houston. She's got a lot of clout in the Houston area, a lot of pull with Houston area coaches. You love to see it. He was assistant coach there before he got into the college football rankings as a coach. And dude, I mean, University of Hands at San Antonio, as you always hear me say, dude, Joe Price, very instrumental in developing the trio of wide receivers, Josh Cephas, DeCorian Clark, JT, and Zakari Franklin. Just the saltiest dang trio of wide receivers in the group of five, maybe in college football. And those guys are super talented. They're super good, but they've also made tremendous strides in their ball catching ability and in their game, because they're not just catching balls. I mean, these guys are blocking, they're setting up fakes, they're running pick routes. I mean, dude, just beautiful football from all three of those guys. And so Joe Price, man, he's incredible. And I wouldn't mind seeing him continue to move up that ladder here at UTSA.
And, it was key to get him that bump in pay immediately, because I saw his name linked to a lot of Power 5 receiver coaching jobs.
Yeah,
and I don't know if he was a finalist for the position at UT, but his name was linked there a lot. And it never seemed like he was the front runner or anything like that, but he was in those conversations. And I think the same at Texas Tech as well. So great to see him get, the pay and promotion that he deserves. And I think more bright things to come for him for sure once this guy started getting into the NFL draft.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, the guy is very revered in these coaching circles from his time at Galena Park and North Shore. He's, THCSA, Traylor loves to pound that. And he's even in the Greater Houston Area Football Coaches Association. And so, yeah, man, that pool on your resume, when you've got that sort of recruiting prowess, dude, it's worth a lot. Let's say it like that.
No doubt about it. Sticking on the offense, but moving along to the offensive line. So we had two changes here. So of course, unfortunately, Matt Maddox was poached for the same position at Purdue. I think he's run game coordinator, offensive line coach there. Man, I was shocked that UTSA didn't lose Maddox last year, because I think he's one of the best, if not the best, assistant coach we've ever seen come through UTSA.
Wow. What
he was able to do with that offensive line just being in shambles, it's unbelievable. And his role in developing like Walker Beatty, I think we're going to owe Coach Maddox for that for many years to come. In fact, there was a quote from Coach Traylor today where they said they're going to try to work Beatty snaps at all positions so he can never leave the field and play every position. So that should tell you a little bit about how that left tackle position battle is going right now. So, sad to see Maddox leave, but, huge pay jump for him going into the Big Ten. Obviously got a recommendation from Barry Looney at Illinois, because, defensive coordinator Ryan Walters left from Illinois to Purdue, and, Maddox was one of the first guys that he hired. So clear connection there. But with him leaving, that caused a reshuffling. And it's great that Kurt Traylor was working as an assistant offensive line coach last year. I believe he was mostly working with the offensive tackles. So he got promoted to run game coordinator. It's Jeff Traylor's brother. And then UTSA brings in Jarrett Anderson as assistant offensive line coach. So I don't know if they're going to have that same split that Maddox and Traylor had, where, one was working interior, one was working on the edge, or if Anderson's going to work all 5 positions and Traylor's assisting with that, or what. I don't know how they're going to handle that. But I do like pairing, this veteran coach, Jarrett Anderson, with Kurt Traylor. I think offensive line is that one position where you have to have a really good like technician of a coach that's really going to get the best out of guys and develop guys. Running back, wide receiver, I think recruiting is more important on there, but offensive line development is so key. So that's like the one position that you always want to have a grizzled veteran coach that's going to help mold these guys to play to the best of their abilities. Because I mean, look at some of the best offensive lines in the G5 that UTSA has gone against, and those guys are not, top recruits by any means. Some of them are, definitely not the body type that you would expect for that caliber player. So that all makes sense to me. Anderson is what's the right word to use here? TCU fans are not fond of this guy, which is interesting because he was there for so long.
24 years he was at TCU.
Yeah.
He was at TCU for 2.5 decades. I mean, at least give the guy his kudos for I mean, quite literally, like TCU's transformation from being like a bottom of the barrel P5 team that wasn't even considered real P5 to now competing for national championships. I like it's, you got to give him a little bit of respect, Horned Frogs. Got to give him a little bit of respect, I think. But
the story on Anderson is interesting because he's been at TCU for that long. He's kind of been Gary Patterson's right-hand man for as long as they were in Fort Worth. But he moved and coached different positions like almost every other year. I mean, he was just getting moved around like crazy. So I think Anderson probably got some undue blame for TCU just kind of falling apart at the end, and I think he got zeroed in on that.
Scapegoat.
I went back and I watched the film. Those offensive lines were not the best, that's for sure. But I mean, that's not all on Anderson, and that's not to say that he wasn't coaching those guys up too, because they could have been just way out of depth in the Big 12 and not a whole lot of talent around them as well. Which feels weird to say because TCU ended up going to the national championship the year after he left or whatever it was. But
yeah, he did a lot there, man. I mean, he worked with the offensive line. He was a wide receivers coach. He was offensive coordinator. He just got shuffled around a lot. But I agree with you. I do think there was a little bit of scapegoating that happened there with Jared Anderson at TCU. And so that's fine. But I mean, you can't not be excited about a guy that's got 24 years of experience in the Big 12. I mean, that's a home run hire for UTSA, if you ask me, Jared. I mean, geez. Kurt Traylor, as far as his role, I think he's really going to be focused on run game as the run game coordinator. And I think his role with the offensive line is going to mostly be centered around the run game coordinator, right? Or coordinating the offensive line for those run plays. And I think that's kind of where...
You mean like installing schemes and blocking?
Yeah. Making sure guys are in the right place. They know what to do for different sort of run packages. Yeah, absolutely. So I think he's going to kind of have a molding hand with how the offensive line works within the run game. And then Jared Anderson will really be like, your technique guy and picking who's going to go where and all that sort of.
Yeah, put your hands here, not here. Big hands like this, not like
technical, absolutely form and really getting those guys.
It's kind of interesting. This kind of just popped in my head. I'm surprised I never thought this before. But if you look at it as like a ratio of like players to coach, it makes sense to have two offensive line coaches because they're coaching like 15 guys on the 3 deep, that's just not the case at any other position, really.
Sure. Yeah.
And even like defensive line, you do see a lot of those being split where like the edge players are working with the outside linebacker coach and the interior guys are working with the separate defensive line coach. So something to chew on.
Something we've got or something that we will talk about when we get into our spring practice episode, but Kurt Traylor has quite a packed room of running backs, which a couple months ago, that wasn't the case for UTSA at all. And so now he's got a whole stable in there. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the run game sort of takes shape. Who's going to be running behind Kavori and Barnes as we get into the American Athletic Conference. It'll be very exciting.
Right. Well, last promotion or hire to talk about on the offensive side of the ball is Sean Davis getting promoted from, I believe, a senior analyst to the quarterback's coach. So probably not a name that a ton of UTSA fans are super familiar with, but Davis has been around the program and around San Antonio for a long time. He actually came from Incarnate Word.
Yep.
And then ended up at UTSA. And I want to say that he was actually hired by Frank Wilson, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
did he work for Wilson, left and came back maybe?
He got here in 2019.
Yeah, so he was a Wilson hire then.
So 2019 quality control, 2020 2021 offensive analyst, and then 2022 senior offensive analyst. So he's had a hand in the offense for the entirety of Jeff Traylor's run. Yeah,
this guy's been coaching Frank Harris since before Frank Harris, if you know what I mean.
You feel me? Yes. And
you see this a lot across college football. It's like what coach gets the credit, quote unquote, for Patrick Mahomes and Frank Harris and all those guys. And I mean that's there's no way to properly say, oh, this coach got 33% of the credit for this guy becoming an NFL quarterback or whatever. But Coach Davis obviously has a really strong relationship with Frank Harris. These guys have worked together for a long time. So I really have no clue, how hands-on Davis has been in Frank's development, but he certainly has his respect. And I think that's a huge part of being a successful quarterback coach is having that player coach relationship where they're going to really listen to you, confide in you, take your advice, and become better for it.
And while he was co-offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach at UIW, they had a pretty stout passing game there.
Yeah.
In his little tenure there, he's there for about 4 or 5 years. So the guy knows what he's doing, but he's been at UTSA long enough that he commands some respect. So let's put some respect on Sean Davis's name.
Yeah, and he was a very successful collegiate quarterback in his own right. That's something I harp on all the time. I cannot stand when teams hire quarterback coaches that didn't play quarterback at a high level.
Yeah.
And Davis played at a NAIA school, Azusa Pacific, which I thought was higher than NAIA, but it says it right here in the bio. 3-year starter, passed for 3,812 yards and 22 touchdowns in his career. Led the Cougars to 3 consecutive playoff appearances and an 11-win campaign in 2004.
Nice. Very, very nice. Yeah, I love that, man. I'm all for it. Sean Davis. So of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 names that we just went through, only one of them an outside hire so far.
Yeah.
Got a couple more names to go through. But yeah, the promoting from within, man. And we saw that. We saw Traylor do that through each of his off seasons so far. But to do that as you're entering a new conference, a tougher, harder, more competitive conference, I think it really, really shows the faith that Traylor has in his system. Like you got to be really, really strong in the way that you believe in this internal promotions. Because I'm sure as you're going to the American Athletic Conference, it'd be easy to start shopping some big names and wondering who can I get over here, and start making those phone calls to your buddies and your network and seeing what pool you can get to get some big hires as we go into this big, beefier conference. It's gonna be more competitive, harder to win. We need to get the best coaches. But no, Traylor clearly believes in his guys and looks worked so far. I have no reason to doubt that it won't work in the American Conference.
Yeah, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt until he strikes out. And even when he does strike out, if he corrects it quickly, got no problem with it, man.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Because I've mentioned this on a lot of previous podcasts, but it's also a recruiting tool, because you can get these young guys like the guy we're going to talk about next, and you can get him to come start his career with you and hitch his wagon to you, because you have skins on the wall where you can show a career progression path where you don't have to move every 8 months to go get some more money, go get a better job or whatever. That you can kind of ride this wave and win a lot of games while doing it, being a great culture and all of that. I think that's why Aaron Green, San Antonio legend, chose to start his coaching career at UTSA when, he just got hired as a junior analyst. Any program in the state of Texas would have hired him as an analyst. And there's a chance, some smaller schools would have hired him as a running backs coach.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So I think that played a part in like I gotta call him Coach Green now, which is gonna be funny because I grew up watching this guy. But why he chose to begin that part of his life and his career under Coach Traylor. And he's been around the program a lot just as an observer and as a fan. So he knows the culture and what he's getting himself into. And I think that's a lot.
Who's to say that after Frank Wilson's dismissal that Sean Davis maybe wasn't or was very instrumental in making sure that Frank Harris stuck around?
Yeah, that's true.
Absolutely. It's really, really important, and especially now with the transfer portal. You keep these guys on your staff. You keep your players on your roster, right? Because a lot of times it's not the head coach that brings a guy to a team. He has a part of it, but the main direct point of contact is one of these assistant coaches. And so, the more longevity and consistency that you can have there, the better it is for your guys on the roster to stick around and not enter that transfer portal. And winning helps too.
Yeah. So it looks like Aaron Green is going to be focused on wide receivers, because in his announcement tweet that he was joining the staff, he said, "Point me to the best receivers in the city." So
That's right.
Man, him learning the ins and outs of recruiting from Joe Price, having been an Army All-American, playing in Nebraska, playing at TCU, playing in the NFL. Aaron Green's going places, man. And I hope he sticks in San Antonio and does it all, because that man loves the 2-1-0, dude. He's trying to put on for the city.
You forgot something there on the resume, sir.
Oh, what did I miss? My bad.
San Antonio Commanders, AAF, dude. Are you freaking kidding me? This is the 210's very own Coach Aaron Green. Come on.
Nice, man. That's awesome. It's kind of weird that we just ran through all these changes on the offensive coaching staff. Really none to talk about on defense, other than I think Nick Graham got promoted to defensive passing game coordinator.
That's right. Yep.
Are you a little concerned by that there are not changes?
that there's no changes at all on the defense.
Yeah, like no defensive coach got poached.
That's right. You're right about that, Jared.
I don't know, man.
I don't know if it's cause for extreme concern.
I think as a G5, it's a little bit healthy to lose a coach or two a year to Power 5.
It is. But Jared, if you recall, we were very much a defense by committee last year. And I think that might have a lot to do with it. There wasn't one single group or one single player that was just like game breaker ability, right?
Yep.
There definitely wasn't a group that had that game breaker ability. And I think if you saw that, there may have been a little more poaching interest from other schools. But UTSA's defense was one of those bend, don't break. Every single group was pretty good. None of them were upstanding game breakers, but every group was pretty dang good. And so I think that might have a lot to do with it.
While there were not many changes to the defensive coaching staff, there have been huge changes to the off-field support staff, which is something that we have heard Coach Traylor hit on repeatedly, like in his interviews. You know, anytime someone asks him, what's it going to take for UTSA to sustain this, to move to the next level, he's always saying, we need more people. Right. We need recruiting staff. We need nutritionists, blah, 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 blah. Like, list goes on and on and on. So I went in and I did some hard hitting data analysis of counting and comparing last year's roster to this one. There were 27 names on the coaching staff roster in 2022 during the bowl game. Right now, there are 41.
Wow. What was last year's number?
27 to 41.
Holy cow.
Now, I will say some of that 41 I know were in the program last year. So some guys or girls were not on that coaching roster, but they were in the program, right? So they were working their role, but they weren't listed on that. So it's hard to know how many of these are direct new hires versus they just added them to the roster, or maybe some of them have a more formal position now, more pay, stuff like that. But it's impressive, man. It really is. And it shows the commitment. You hope that it keeps going. And it's going to grow as well. I know that UTSA is hiring for a nutritionist right now, which is something that Coach Traylor has, really, really been stressing for. And something that I have heard, kind of off the record from people as well, is the guys don't know how to eat right, which is mind blowing to me. I mean, because to me, that's like on you as a player. Like if you're a D1 player and you're 20 years old, you need to know like good protein versus bad.
Right.
Right.
And look, and you've got all these people on staff, you've got strength coaches, you've got trainers, right? Our boy Philo, you got all these guys and they can tell you what to do, but without like an actual nutritionist on staff, they're more so giving you advice. And I think it's more so on the players to actually follow through with that dieting, with that meal plan. I think when you have a nutritionist on staff, a hell of a lot more accountability on the nutritionist to make sure that these guys are getting the proper diet, the proper way, not the Whataburger drive-through, not the Wendy's drive-through, not Taqueria Jalisco 4 times a week, maybe twice, dude. But
hey, I feel targeted, man. Chill out.
And so,
but yeah, I know what you mean.
But dude, but we've seen it. Like we've seen videos of UTSA player arriving in whatever city at their facility and like the buffet line, like the options, it's a bunch of garbage, dude. Like vacuum packed snacks and like they're like, where's
mix.
Dude, where's the smoothie station? Where is like the fresh wraps? Where's the fruit tray?
The omelet station.
Dude, it's like gushers.
Dude, I swear to God, man. I mean, this is just a 1-minute low resolution video on Twitter. But one time, I swear to God, I saw like a big bowl full of cans of Campbell's soup sitting out at the race. I swear to God, dude. I swear to God.
My gosh.
And I was just looking at it like, dude, you know how much sodium there is in that can?
There was a whole time where like the NFL was like sponsored with Campbell. There was like Donovan McNabb's mom, and she was like busting out like the chunky cans for everybody.
Yeah, I remember that.
It reminds me. It was like you'd see it every football game. And I don't know. I guess maybe some that stuck around with some of our guys on staff. I think that's really the goods, but it's not, man. And then you see a video of U of H eating before their game. that do the omelets, the smoothies, fresh pineapple, like it's all laid out. Yep. It's a very, very necessary hire for this team to get a nutritionist. It's something that we've always known, and we haven't talked about it too much on this podcast, but when we see those little videos and clips, we're like, what the hell is going on? And then all these weird random injuries that we had last season, it makes you wonder, right? Is nutrition a part of it, right? Because your body can withstand more with the right nutrients. You can handle a lot more. You can endure a lot more. Without, a lot of that power, it's not as strong. A lot of the size that you see is more fluff than it is actual meat, and that has a lot to do with it, man. Nutrition's got a lot to do with it.
Mm-hmm. So other than the nutritionist, I think one of the most key support staff hires that UTSA has made this offseason was bringing in a general manager for the first time in program history. That's Mike Giglio. I had to read the pronunciation guide on that because it's not pronounced the way that it reads.
Giglio. Yep. Giglio.
Yeah. So he comes from South Florida. I think a lot of folks that listen to this podcast are well aware of the struggles that USF has had in football. But Giglio and Traylor go way back. I mean, I think they coached together under Charlie Strong at Texas, and I think there might have been one other stop that they worked at together. Of course, USF fans are trashing this hire. They're like, this guy's terrible. And they said the same thing about Matt Maddox before he came to UTSA. And just like we said earlier, he ended up being one of the best coaches that's ever come through UTSA. So I'm not too concerned about the opinions of USF fans, because man, they had a lot of things. They had a lot of things going on. It's hard to
look
put
in the mirror,
vacuum. And all
look
that.
in the mirror, USF. Look in the mirror. Yeah, for sure.
But Giglio's role is not like coaching players on the field, and it's not even really recruiting. Like, he is in charge of managing the day-to-day operations of the full staff, right?
Program budget, travel, calendars, interview requests, engagements, right? And then like your whole travel schedule, right? Where are we going to be practicing? What facilities are going to be in? Where are we staying at, right? And then on top of that, he's got the alumni relationships. So getting those old players out for those fourth quarter appearances, right? All that good stuff, but nothing actually on the field. Quite truly a general manager of the program.
Right. And I think the hope here is that he frees up a lot of the tedious work that other guys on the staff are having to do, and just enables them to spend more time with their family, more time focused on recruiting, and just have less things up in the air that they have to juggle. My understanding is that this position oversees the coordinator football operations, director of player personnel, and then below them, so like director of high school relations, player development, all that stuff, right? So
also, Jared, Giglio and Burke were at UCF at USF at the same time.
That's right.
So there's another little connection,
right?
And I guess Maddox would have been there at the same time too. Then
probably
17, 18,
probably.
Yeah, because I think Giglio followed Charlie Strong there, right, from Texas, I want to say.
Correct.
Yeah. This is kind of like uncharted territory for G5 team to have a general manager. Yes, No, I'm sure your big Power 5 schools all have a general manager. Your
I don't think all of them do, but I would say a good chunk of them. Like, this position really kind of came into vogue at LSU. A guy that actually his brother coached at UTSA, Austin Thomas. Will Thomas was his brother or cousin or something like that. Yeah. So that guy was the first GM in college football at LSU. And then after that, it just kind of spread like wildfire.
Wow. Interesting. Okay. So LSU kind of started that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, I think it's really, really interesting. And hopefully it takes a little bit of stress off of Traylor and staff's plate and they're able to kind of hone in on the football stuff a little bit more.
Yeah,
I
dude,
mean,
absolutely. I mean,
I imagine that's sort of like the key to this hire, right? Is to
right.
free up everyone else's time
Yep.
from logistical BS to football.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And even if you have those individual roles that are handling those like day-to-day operations things, if they all still report to Traylor, it doesn't really free up that much time because it's just like one level removed. But if he's only working with Coach Giglio and then Giglio's managing those below him, that should really reduce like the amount of work and stress and upkeep with, making sure those departments are operating efficiently.
Man, so in one offseason, UTSA not doubles, but increases the staff size by a third, increases it by 50%, from just 27 to 41. Man, it's phenomenal. Soon to be 42 once we get that nutritionist here. Wow.
Yeah, I would encourage people to go look at the coaching roster on Go UTSA. It's quite impressive to see.
Really impressive, man. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Well, I'm a big fan of all the staff changes, man. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, this is a big time football program, man. I mean, look at this roster and then go compare it to a Sunbelt coaching roster. It's a 9-day difference for sure. There are a lot. I did this analysis last year. Actually, there are a lot of schools in the AAC that have coaching rosters like this. Memphis does, SMU does, USF does. So UTSA is like really getting aligned with those schools, but I think that they also separate from the rest of the G5. I mean, go look at Sam Houston's coaching roster. It's not going to look anything like this. So, not that having more people is going to fix every problem, but it's not going to hurt.
Right. Yep. You got that cool. Right.
I mean, other bit of major news, I think, is the release of the football schedule. So we did have the out-of-conference schedule already, of course, but we now have our very first AAC conference schedule. And man, I think it's pretty damn favorable to UTSA.
Dude.
I like it a lot.
Yeah. Just talking odds wise, for sure, man. For sure.
Not only odds, but also like TV exposure, day of the week, travel, opponent familiarity, all of that.
Yes, the familiarity.
I think all of it is really good for UTSA.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of last year's schedule that it came in waves. It started off extremely hard, and then we kind of had a little bit of a break there, and then it got a little bit tougher back there on the back end of the schedule. When we look at this one, the front end is pretty top heavy for UTSA, and then towards the end of the schedule, it starts to get a little bit easier as we get into November, but then we've got a big one in the finale of the regular season. Yeah. So it is a little bit reminiscent of last year's schedule for me, but dude, a lot of usual suspects on here, teams that we know that we're familiar with. And then the teams that we do get to play for the very first time, really, really exciting. We got cool road trips to look forward to. And then we have some good, like pretty respectable programs coming down to the Alamo Dome as well. And I think that's going to be tremendous for fan attendance, right? I mean, you have a team show up on the schedule that people recognize, that they know. It just by default drives a little bit more interest.
I think in the away games too. I mean, I always go back and forth if like an average sports fan knows Temple or not, because they're really more of a basketball school than a football school. But the odds of someone knowing who Temple is much higher than them knowing like Charlotte or Old Dominion or someone like that. So I think it just keeps people engaged a little bit more in the program, and like they're not kind of squinting at the ESPN ticker trying to figure out who the heck this team is that UTSA is playing. And I think there's a little bit air of legitimacy, I guess, to the schedule.
Sure. Well, let's go through it. it. So our first 4 games out of conference, I guess we've talked about it a little bit, but we start the season in Houston at U of H, redemption game following the 3 overtime season opener in the Alamo Dome last year that UTSA dropped. Then the Battle of I-35 HEB Golden Shopping Cart is back in the Alamo Dome September 9th. Texas State will be coming to town. Very, very excited for that quote unquote rivalry to be to be revitalized once more, right? And we've got a back-to-back homestand following that. Army comes to town right after, and so pretty favorable opening for UTSA. I mean, you got Houston. That's going to be a hard game, but I think UTSA is going to be very, very motivated to win that game. But with Texas State and Army both coming to San Antonio, very, very favorable matchups there. Then we've got to go on the road all the way to Knoxville, Tennessee to play the Tennessee in Knoxville. That is going to be a crazy, rambunctious environment for these guys. And I think probably the biggest road stand of the year. We've got Tennessee 1 week. We've got we've got a bye week in between, but then we got to go right back to the East Coast. So back-to-back trips to the East Coast. We go to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to see Temple in the very first American Athletic Conference game that UTSA will ever play.
Yeah, if you think back, there's a couple of years where UTSA never left the state of Texas or didn't leave the state of Texas until like November. Definitely not the case on the schedule. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's a chance that Tennessee could be the highest rated opponent UTSA's ever played against in football.
Oh yeah,
so that would be
for sure. And Temple's not going to be a cakewalk by any means. That's going to be an extremely tough game to go into Philadelphia and try to win.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were better than the record was last year, and
yes.
I think they're showing some improvement as well. And those long road trips are just always tough for this program. But I'm excited about that one. I'm going to try to make it out to Philly. I had a brief visit to Philly. Loved it. Want to get some more Philly in my life.
Nice.
What do you think about the bye week? Is it too early or just right for you?
Way too early. And I think be careful what you wish for. Jeff Traylor pounding the table about having week 10 bye weeks the last two seasons. They think both of the last two seasons, we didn't get a bye week to the very end of October. And that sucked. But now we're getting one before you enter conference play. Dude. So you're looking at 8 straight conference games, no time off. Dude, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really, really hard. Because I do think that late bye week is really beneficial for UTSA getting healthy going into November in that final stretch, trying to get into a conference championship game. This season, that's not going to be the case, man. I mean, there's going to be a lot of wear and tear on these guys getting into November, dude. It's going to be hard. 8 straight conference matchups. And those games, every single one of them matter tremendously. And you start against Temple, and then you got to go against UAB back-to-back to start off AAC. Dude, that's tough, bro. It's tough. You're going to be 2 weeks out of that bye week, and you're already going to be a little gassed, a little sore, a little hurting for sure, man. You're going to have some of those tweaks going through some guys. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Very difficult. It's way too early.
I do like the bye coming off of Tennessee because it's by far the toughest game on the schedule, and then you break up those 2 road trips. But yeah, I think ideally it would have been a couple weeks later, but it could be worse, I suppose.
Careful what you wish for.
So you mentioned UAB after Temple, then you got another far road trip all the way to FAU, Boca Raton, a place that UTSA has never played well historically.
Good point. Very good point.
And you have a really tough East Carolina team coming to the Alamo for the first time. I hope they bring fans. They've got an awesome fan base. I think we have a lot in common with the ECU Pirates fans, namely that we can throw some liquor down. So hope they come out and check out the tailgates. It's going to be nice to make new friends. Then November 4th, the following week, UTSA returns to Denton, still chasing their first win in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. A rematch at the Conference USA Championship game.
Dude.
I haven't been to Denton in a long time. That might get me up there. It might. We'll see.
UTSA football has not won a game in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex since 2013, folks. 2013.
It's so crazy, dude. So moving along, home game against Rice, and then you come right back with another home game against South Florida. So that's 2 pretty winnable games in a row. Rice has toughened up quite a bit. South Florida's got a new coach. We'll see how they look. But definitely not a huge difficulty period there. But then, to wrap up the schedule, you got a doozy. Tulane in New Orleans.
Oof.
Thanksgiving weekend. Really, really, really good chance that this game is going to determine who plays in the AAC championship. If it doesn't, it's because both teams are already in.
which it would be the precursor of the AAC championship. We're going to get the same matchup twice. Very well could happen. Tulane at UTSA 2 weeks in a row. Holy cow, man.
Is it fair to say that this is the most anticipated conference game in UTSA football history?
1,000,000% fair.
I think so.
Are you kidding me?
So.
I mean, up until last year's championship game, I guess, right? North Texas, that could be the most anticipated. But
before the season though, like we didn't know we were going to play UNT in August.
Sure.
For the championship. Yeah,
absolutely. No, this is huge, man. I mean, this is tremendous. Tulane in NOLA right after Thanksgiving. I think a lot of guys are going to be shucking oysters for Thanksgiving because they're already going to be in New Orleans, ready to go and represent the Roadrunners down there. That is going to be a wacky, wild weekend, man. And it could very well just happen again the very next week. Some guys might just stay in Tulane for 10 days.
Oh, buddy. That would be my demise.
10 days in the French Quarter. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Let's quickly explain the flex scheduling because we got a lot of questions about that when the schedule dropped.
And this is the only game that is considered a flex schedule game, right?
Yeah, for UTSA. I think Friday. The AAC. Yeah, I think the AAC does have some others. So one of my biggest complaints about Conference USA was the very few games that did get nationally televised were never good matchups. They were always total snooze fest. Like one team's way better than the other. There's no one in the stadium. It was not a good showcase for the league, but they make those schedules so far in advance and lock in those TV schedules so far in advance that, when a team obviously is underperforming and they're not going to be any good, it's nothing you can do about it. You're just going to put a bad product on TV.
Yep.
AAC does it differently. So they have a flex schedule, which means they pick out like 2 games, right? So 4 teams total. And then they're going to pick one of those 2 games to move up to that Friday primetime slot.
Yeah.
Where you can get really good TV ratings. So I think for this November game, UTSA and Tulane, I think the other one is like North Texas against ECU or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So whichever of those 2 matchups ends up being the most anticipated.
Juicy. Yeah.
Is going to get flexed to Friday so you can put them on ESPN.
Right.
And I'm talking about ESPN 1. I'm not talking about CBS Sports or none of that BS. So I think that's awesome. And also, I mean, just as fans of the AAC, it's going to be so cool to get a really good game every Friday night in the AAC.
Oh, well, and this one, man, everyone's off of work that day, the Friday after Thanksgiving. I mean, there's a chance to have it.
Dude, Yulman is going to be rocking, brother. I can't wait.
Unbelievable broadcast. Unbelievable viewership numbers could be on that game, man. Both these teams are really striding going into that game. It could be big. And this is one thing that plays tremendously into UTSA's favor is that we've got Rice and South Florida on a back-to-back homestand. If we've been taking care of business through September on October, hopefully we can take care of Rice and South Florida there in those first halves and give the ones some rest in the second half. That South Florida game is on a Friday, so it's not a short week turnaround. If we do get flexed into the Friday game after Thanksgiving, we still get a full week to rest, recoup, and practice, prepare. So, we do have a couple of benefits there. And we actually have 2 back-to-back homestands on the schedule, which is interesting because we only have 1 back-to-back away road trip. So that's nice. But those 2 games right there are going to be extremely instrumental how we perform against Rice and South Florida and how early we perform against them in our prep for Tulane.
Mm-hmm. Not to compare either of these teams to FIU last year. That was ridiculous because they're way better than that. Mm-hmm. But you want to have that kind of game where UTSA can get out to a lead early, put some of the younger guys in, let them get some reps, take some starters out, and still win comfortably.
Yep.
Even if you don't completely blow them out.
Yep. It's key, man.
Well, cool. I like the schedule a lot. Like if I were to go back through the years, this is probably one of my favorite UTSA football schedules of all time. So I'm really excited for the season. I'm really excited to cover it with you at Alamo Audible.
Oh, Jared.
Oh, yeah, of course. And I'm really excited to talk more UTSA football in our next episode when we dive deep. Sorry, my cat Francois jumping all over.
Francois appearance, dude, all over.
Dude, I know his first Alamo Audible podcast appearance.
Dude, he's pumped for UTSA football, bro. He's man. he was like, "Are you guys talking football in there? Because you guys just been talking website and store and logo changes and crap. I'm tired of it." He's hearing some UTSA football. He's like, yeah.
The other night when I was explaining what a 500 server error means, Francois was nowhere to be found, but he's back. He's back for the schedule breakdown. We'll be back with our next episode to do a deeper dive on spring football, kind of talk some of the main storylines there, what we're hearing, what we're seeing, all that good stuff. So appreciate you guys. If you're not already subscribed, please do so. Alamo Audible on everything now. I don't have to give a stupid caveat that we have different names on Twitter or Facebook.
Well, and
check out alamoaudible.com. It'll soon redirect you to Alamo Audible. So bear with us.
Well, and yes, spring practice talk is coming, but for our Patreon subscribers, you will be getting another juicy baseball roundup podcast talking about Roadrunners UTSA baseball later this week. So, yes, indeed.
Thanks for the reminder, man. We have been so busy that completely slipped my mind. So we're gonna have Dan on for his first Patreon episode with us. Nice. We're going to do a little UTSA baseball talk, but we're also going to look at Conference USA baseball now that we've got a couple weeks of results for those teams and see, who's surprising, who's standing out, some of the crazier things that we've seen happen in the conference so far. So that'll be a good prep as UTSA gets ready for the conference slate in baseball.
We'll also be recapping a absolute thrashing of the Texas State Bobcats tonight. Yes,
we're both watching it on mute as we record this. It's 11-1. Good guys.
Our very first Patreon episode under the new brand. Very exciting stuff coming at you tomorrow, guys.
All right, guys. Thank you all so much. We'll see you guys back for the next episode.